can see you.
It got real quiet real fast. I'm very excited to welcome you all to the East Central meeting tonight. We do meet quarterly these days, and we have reorganized a little bit in our executive board so that we can be more effective overall in really critical topics for our area. And I see a lot of folks are still out in the lobby kind of making their way in here. I'd like to tell you about a little bit of business for our community. You probably have all seen that we've got some construction that's begun on 11th East and now First South, which was a project that we reviewed a while ago for affordable housing in our area. So that area has now been fenced off and is beginning. We have been invited for some lighting information for the city. There was a lighting master plan that was developed about 2 years ago, and a special project is going to take place where we get to vote and look at the demonstration of the lighting and what we believe would be good, and also identify areas in our area that need additional lighting to make things safe. So if you're interested in that, if you will send me an email through the East Central email, I will get you the information for that meeting and that type of information. Yalecrest, which is a neighboring community council of ours, has felt like they wanted to begin what's called an East Side Coalition of community councils. The West Side has a coalition that they have about 5 or 6 of the community councils that work together on key things. And they thought it might be helpful for the East Side to organize similarly. One of their concerns recently was the development of the Sunnyside Park into a baseball field that the land was leased to the university by the city. And there's some concern about that lease did go forward. But they felt like it would be better if on these kinds of things, more from the East Side could kind of be involved. East Central, for a long time, has had really a successful relationship by working with various developers and various folks that are doing work in a more collaborative, win-win kind of way. We aren't used to doing, the old days we used to do the fighting and the pickets and the lawsuits and all, but we found that a lot of that didn't actually bring fruit. So when we started doing more collaborative work, we actually found that we had some pretty good success. So I'm not quite sure what form this organization will take and whether it will be good for us to participate, but there is a second exploratory meeting on this topic. And if you're interested in hearing about it, and certainly our board will go and investigate this. I will go investigate it and we'll report back to you all. But if any of you would like to join us, we'd love to have that to gain your input. Okay, that's kind of it for the immediate things happening in the neighborhood. We have 3 people who have joined our board. During the COVID years and such, when we were not meeting as frequently as chair, I'm authorized to actually appoint people to join our board so that we can continue to function. And now that we're actually meeting and we have enough folks here, I would like to present those people to you all for a sustaining vote to have them join our board. So first of all, one name that you are familiar with is Anna Valdemoris, who was our city council representative, has agreed to join our board to participate and work especially on economic development pieces and funding for our area. So that is one person. And I'm looking straight at you and I'm having a name fade. Help me. Gwen is another. Gwen, if you could stand up just real quick, introduce yourself.
I'm Gwen Christ. I live over on Elizabeth Street, and I've lived here for about 25 years, and am really excited to join the board and work on some urban forest and green space type issues.
Thank you. The next is Grace. Now, Grace was actually her company, and her has now moved into the neighborhood. Grace, I'm going to let you stand up and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Peterson, and my company is Landmark Property and Development. I went to the University of Utah. I lived inside of the ECC for 4 years as a student. I now live in Sugar House, but we've owned buildings inside of the ECC for several decades. And now our office is located right on 13th and 2nd in a building that we've owned. And now is our own fuel office. You're welcome to stop by at any time. And yeah, so excited to help out as much as I can.
So what's a very interesting fact is that Grace's firm was partner with Harbor Bay. At the time, their firm was partner with working on the potential development up on University Street. And we built a very strong relationship through all of our work with Harbor Bay and also their company, and have built these relationships. So we're very appreciative of both Harbor Bay and your company listening to our input and shifting. We're sorry for Sugar House, but we're very glad that we're not tearing down houses up on University Street. So anyway, I'd like to take a vote from the community. First of all, for Anna, if you agree to have her join our board, if you would just show it, that would be great. Okay, that's pretty much unanimous. Okay, the same thing now for Gwen. Okay, excellent, and the same for Grace. So, okay, appreciate that very much. I can't begin to tell you how heartwarmed I am for the caliber of people that have agreed to join the board and who are working with all their heart and their passion to help support this community and these neighborhoods. The expertise and the level of commitment and the love of the area is just incredible, and it's awesome to have that level of support, and I just really appreciate that from everybody who's on the board. So with that, I want to next go to Tim, our liaison from the mayor's office. We welcome you, Tim, and we're very glad that you're here.
Thank you, Esther. I'm Tim Cosgrove, the mayor's citywide liaison and liaison for District 4. I'm always impressed with this community council. On an evening like this, and you turn out like this, that's commitment. My appreciation and accolades, just like Esther's, goes out to you for your service and your love of the community and your neighborhood. So thank you. Just a few things. I had some handouts, but I'm gonna pass these around about the different events going on throughout the city. The way they do things now, I'm a little bit more old school, but they have what's called a QR code. So you can scan these QR codes and get that information. I tried as best as I could to post the dates, times, and locations also on the site if you want to copy those down. But first we have an Earth Day event coming up April 20th, Saturday, at the Jordan River Parkway Trail for a cleanup. Last year we had over 2,000 people. So it's a good event, good day. People ride their bikes out there. There's food. They'll have a lot of tents set up with other additional information of things that you can help out volunteering wise in your community. We also have the Japan Festival coming up April 27th. It's downtown on First South between 2nd and 3rd West. There's about 10,000 people that turned out last year. The RDA did a proposal for Japantown. It's on their website. They'll be there sharing that as well. If you're interested, come on down. Passing out information on the Livable Streets program. These are some of the traffic mitigation. I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. It's just some of the calming traffic for, traffic calming measures that we use throughout the city. And you can go in there and put your input on the website for livable streets. They're taking input right now. We always have the feedback web page. So if you go to slcgov.com/feedback, there's so many surveys throughout the city with everything that's going on for all of your ideas for the parks. We passed the general obligation bond. You did, the voters. There's a lot of input that they're taking in on parks. Esther mentioned the road construction on 1100 East. I'm pretty sure that survey's gone and passed, but those are the kind of surveys. The byways there's some of the byway surveys are open still. So I welcome you to participate in that. Also, recently, we have our Good Neighbor Guide. This is a resource for city services. It's just something simple and easy, still back old school. You can take your phone and download the Salt Lake City mobile app, and you see graffiti, take a shot of it, and it'll go right to the graffiti removal team. They'll be out there within 24 hours, remove that graffiti. But if you're a little bit old school like me and you want one of these Good Neighbor Guide folders, and you can hang it on your fridge, it's also a good resource. And then also pass around the mayor's newsletter if you want to sign up for that. There's a little green pin right here. So I'll pass those around and then share some additional information. So, it's annual spring pothole, we call it Pothole Palooza. So last year we did this, it seemed quite effective. The mayor put out a big broadcast to let everybody know springtime is here. The winters are rough on our roads. You get a crack, the water melts, freezes in the crack, expands, cracks the asphalt, makes a pothole. Last year, it was very successful. We repaired over 38,000 potholes citywide. So if you see a pothole and you want to join in, we're already at 19,000, just beginning. So also, please, if you, like I was driving on 3rd East, I had the Department of Public Services, streets, right in front of me, and they were stopping, moving up a little bit forward, stopping, moving up a little bit forward. They're refilling those potholes, and then they come back through with a heat and heat it up so that it settles. But just drive patiently. It's our city employees out there trying to make the city streets better for us, so have patience with them. We've met quarterly, so you probably didn't hear we had a new Chief Administrative Officer. I know Esther knows her better than me or probably anybody. Jill Remington Love. She was the city council member from District 5 for 3 terms, quite a while. So she's our new Chief Administrative Officer. She'll be working with all the departments and the divisions, ensuring that our quality is being provided for. They've been very busy. We're in the middle of budget season right now, which brings me to another point. So the mayor's turning in her budget by May 7th, and you'll have opportunities to weigh in at the city council during the city council meetings when they have their public hearings, May 24th and June 7th. But if you want to weigh in, you can get on the website, look up the budget. The mayor wants to hear from you. So this is your opportunity to weigh in, make your priorities known. We get that information, it comes back. The work's already been done from the different departments on what their priorities are, but she wants to ensure that we're listening to you as well. You can go to that feedback page, slcgov.com, feedback, and then make sure you weigh in on the mayor's budget. We do community office hours. We make ourselves present. I'm not very intimidating. I like to set myself up vulnerable. Would you say, Esther? Am I vulnerable? But we go around the neighborhood, so we're not just sitting in City Hall waiting for you to come talk to us. We go out into the neighborhood. And so this week, tomorrow, I'll be at the Liberty Senior Citizens Center from 10 to 2. If you want to drop by there and share any thoughts, concerns, hopefully carrying loudly instead of complaints, but I take all of those. And I think that's it, unless there's any questions. All right, thanks for having me.
So I do have, it's on the pothole thing with UDOT. So where UDOT stops and city starts, so 13th East is always an issue.
Good point.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, so maybe the mayor's office can pressure UDOT to.
We couldn't hear that.
So 14th South, or excuse me, 13th South, 13th East, 4th South, and 13th East. So there's the state roads, 4th South, 300 West, well, to 4th South on 300 West. South of 4th South is city, 700 East, Foothill, those are state roads. So this is for, when I say Pothole Palooza and calling in to report a pothole, did I give you that number? 801-535-2345, 801-535-2345. You can also report it online. And they have a more detailed, where you can put in that very description that you identified, say, hey, you're missing something here, UDOT's got this piece, city has this piece, it's not getting filled. That helps us to know and get it taken care of.
They repaved half the road and then did nothing on the other half. It was really dumb.
Okay. There's a lot of construction going on, 2100 South, I'm sure if you tried driving through there, Sugar House, 1100 East. So this is, I mean, I remember when Derek Kitchen was city council, and we'd go around to all the community councils. We'd say, wouldn't it be nice if we had money for roads? We hadn't had money for roads for 22 years. And because of you all in 2018, we passed that general obligation bond with the stipulation that all that funding goes for roads and has to be expended by 2025. So there's this mass rush, this big push to make sure that we're following through, doing our due diligence with that bond, using the money how you intended it, and getting those road projects completed. 300 West is complete. 900 South, they're just finishing up the parking strip areas, usually from October, November, the fall till spring. There's more of a moratorium because of the holidays and the weather, that they can't do some of the things that they need to do to finish that project. But that will be coming complete. I know 200 South is a little bit of another story, because that's Dominion Energy's putting in a increased capacity for all of the big tower apartment buildings there. So we're in that one for the long haul. Then the city will come through and repave 200 South. So yeah. Any other questions? Did I answer those? All right. Thank you. Thanks, Esther.
Thank you, Tim. Sorry. Tim is awesome, and his contact information is on the agenda, so feel free to reach out. But because he also handles citywide, plus handling our area, he is a very busy man, and we really appreciate your support. Christy, did I see you come in? Christy is going to talk to us about the upcoming marathon. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's all part of it. I have to document that I'm here, so, for the city, so that's why. I won't really do a pose, I'm just kidding. Anyway, I'm very excited. I am Christy Wachter, and I have been with the Salt Lake City Marathon for the last 10 or 11 years as the volunteer director and community engagement director. And we are very excited about this year's race. We have record numbers of participants, and 85% of the participants are people that are local state, Utah state residents. And then the remaining 15%, we have representatives from 49 states and 15 countries. So we've got some people that we, we're excited to show off our Salt Lake Valley as we can as athletes and volunteers. And we have a tremendous reputation as a race for the athletes because of the volunteers and the citizen support along the way. I had one athlete tell me a couple of years ago, this is a guy who has done Ironman races all over the world. And he came up to me and he said, Salt Lake City, he didn't even need to. He said, I just wanted to do Salt Lake City Marathon because I love it so much because of the people. And he cited those very reasons. He said, we have the best volunteers. He said, I can't believe the volunteer support. And I've run races in different parts of the country, and I can't believe it either. We outshine everyone. But the community here is what really makes the difference. So thank you. Thanks to you and your community members for the support here. Now, just quickly, I became involved in the Salt Lake City Marathon, and the year that my younger sister's cancer went into remission, because the Huntsman Cancer Foundation is our beneficiary. She is there, again, her cancer has come back, and she's just received a bone marrow transplant. And so this is what makes the Salt Lake Marathon, so besides the fact that it's a great showpiece for our community and a great race for athletes, we do so much good. We have donated just over $1 million to the Huntsman Research Foundation in the years since the company that owns it now, High Altitude Events, has been involved, and that's been since 2008, I believe. So anyway, that's just a personal story of how important this race is. But what I have for you is information, and we have electronic flyers that have gone out to you. We have resources thanks to technology that we have not had in the past. So I sent with the electronic flyer instructions, and you went over all the construction, so I'm not going to belabor that, but it has affected, the construction has affected the course a little bit. It is stated very clearly in the electronic flyer, as well as on our website. It's for saltlakecitymarathon.com. And we have the schedule. We had a great neighborhood notification on March 30th, where volunteers went to all of the businesses along the course route and notified them. And then this Saturday, the week before the race, I have a crew of 30 volunteers who are going to help me do the neighborhood distribution of flyers, so that everyone will be well aware. And there's a schedule on the front and a list of road closures and so forth on the front. And there's a QR code in the electronic flyer that makes it so easy to look at road closures. The hotline, we have a hotline open, info@saltlakecitymarathon.com. And we have a great athletes guide for those athletes in your community who are participating, including the little ones. My favorite race of all, the kids race. It's so cute. We have characters as usual, like the princesses, the Spider-Man, and a bunch of characters that will be leading the kids through their little race to give them the a jump start on how important healthy lifestyle is. So this April 18th, we will have the goodie bag, the swag bag stuffing at the Salt Palace. The 19th will be the Expo Center pickup again at the Salt Palace for the athletes to pick up their stuff. And then on April 20th is the race day. And the bike tour starts at 6 a.m. at the University of Utah. The marathon and half marathons start at 7 a.m. The 10K starts at 7:10. 5K, 7:15, and again, all of these things are on the website and on the electronic flyer. 8 a.m., kids' activities start, and then we will close up the finish line by 1:30. And that is what I've got for you. Have you got questions for me? No? Okay, well, let me just thank you again for your support. I really appreciate it. And it was fun to see you folks live. Most people, this has been electronic for so long, and so I'm glad to actually see members of the community. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you. So Marie, our detective, sent a message about 20 minutes ago that said she cannot make it tonight. Something came up, and she did send a little report for me to read. So I'm going to do that real quick. Hello, East Central Community Council. I want to reach out and provide you with a link to look up the crime statistics in your area. Now, this is a long link, so rather than read it, I'm going to send it out on the email distribution list. And is there anybody in the room who is not getting the emails? Okay, great. So we'll send that out tonight. Click on this link and you will find a tutorial on how to navigate this extremely user-friendly addition to Crime Stats. Below are the crime stats for March in the East Central Community Council. As you look, pay a special attention to the number of increases or decreases instead of the percentage. If you look at aggravated assaults, you will see a 100% increase from the 3-year average. But if you look at the number of incidents, it's a total of 3 incidents instead of the average 1.7 every 3 years. I am very sorry that I was not able to make this meeting tonight. If you have any concerns, which I know we have some, my email is marie.stewart, that's marie.stewart@slcgov.com. Her phone number is here too, which is 801-799-3012, and I will also send that out. One of the things that we hope to talk about with Marie a little bit was the efforts that we have been making related to extreme parties. Now, graduation is coming up, so we know there are going to be some extreme parties coming up. We have a little more topic about this a little bit later about our task force that we established. But we are not talking about normal parties. You know, living in this area for as many years as I've lived, you're always going to have students, you're always going to have parties. Well, we were talking about extreme parties, and what we saw happening was that the fraternities were actually funding and supporting various houses where members lived. They were not actually frat houses, but they were funding that parties could take place at the various houses in our neighborhood. We established a list. Our list is up to 28 houses. And we have, as a task force, been working on those as actually we notice things going beyond what should be normal. And we're not being fanatical. We're not saying no parties. We're just saying when it's 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning and you're having a basic rave across 4 streets and there are 300 people with colored hair, that's a little too much. So we have had some work with the University of Utah where we've had some meetings with them. And Marie actually worked on getting a party car established for our area. There was already funding for a party car, but it was only patrolling the actual frat houses up on Frat Row. It was not dipping into our neighborhood. So they had to do a policy change to actually have it come into our area. So we are going to continue to do our work, and some of the task force members will talk a little bit about how we're doing that a little bit later, but I did want to just mention that Marie has been involved in that, and we're anxious to really continue to work so that this gets into a reasonable control for our quality of life. Any questions immediately on this one? Okay. All right. So next, oh, sorry, I didn't see. Oh, Tim, go ahead.
I was just going to share, and I'm not the
Do you want to, why don't you come up here, because we're recording, it'd be good too.
I was just going to share, I'm not the crime expert, but there's a new tool that you can use to pull that information yourself. Salt Lake City Police Department, Lindsay Larson created that tool. There's actually a tutorial on how to use it. So you can pull up the crime data in your district, think it goes down to the local community council area by year, by month. That's on the Salt Lake City website, and that came out just last month. And they did a presentation to all of the community council chairs and how to utilize that. But it's on, if you look at Salt Lake City Police Department's website, it's on their website.
So before you go, when there's extreme parties and there's statistics and it's reoccurring, what is the city doing about it? You don't have to answer that right now, we'll have that later in the meeting, but it's like, we can have statistics and complain and log and blah, 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 but what is the city going to do about it? Contemplate that and come back.
We know what we're doing, but we'll talk a little more about that. One of the things I find too, I'll be driving around, or I'll see all of a sudden a police car, or I'll see just somebody upset about something that's happened, and I'll say, have you reported it? And most often I find that neighbors go, no, I'm just not gonna worry about it. But we really do need to report, because the more we actually report the incidents that are happening in our area, that's how people actually get assigned to our area. And if we don't report, then we end up not having what's actually happening in our area showing up. So, all right, next, it's like I said, my husband could kiss this team, because we're actually gonna start working on infrastructure in our area. My husband retired from the phone company with 46 years, and a big chunk of his life was underground doing cable repair. And he can tell you the amount of infrastructure needed work. And usually when we talked about infrastructure, what would happen is streets would get talked about, and potholes, but not what's happening underneath. And we know that we've got old infrastructure for our water and our sewer in our area, and we're very concerned about that. And this is a project that actually begins in our area in South Temple, so I asked them to talk a little bit, not just about this project, but also a little broader. So Diamond and Mariah, if you would come up, that'd be great.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Diamond Zollinger. I work for Salt Lake City with the Department of Public Utilities. I'm the sewer program manager. And then Mariah, she's also with sewer, and she's gonna be the project manager on this project. Like Esther said, she wanted to talk a little bit about the sewer system and how it impacts you in your area. So I just kind of wanted to give a quick rundown, and if you have any questions, feel free. Sewer is something we don't really think about until there's a problem, but it's something that all of us use daily, and it's very critical. Salt Lake City has over 700 miles of sewer pipe all throughout the city, ranges from 8 inches to 78 inches. For reference, I'm 74 inches, so we have some big pipes in the system. The pipes, some were installed in the 1800s when the city was settled, and this is one of those pipes that was installed in the late 1800s. Several of the pipes are made of clay, and that's what this pipe is as well. But the city also has concrete pipe, we have plastic pipe, and as we move forward, we use carbon fiber pipe as well, because it lasts longer, and then it can convey the sewage more. Salt Lake City, we're also good geographically, because gravity helps us a lot, especially on the east side. Gravity allows the sewer to flow down. So most of the sewer pipes in the system flow downhill to like the Jordan River, and then the Salt Lake, because that's the lowest point of the valley, and so that's the natural path of the sewer as well. And so that's where the treatment plant is. On the west side, and like by the airport, you're in the bottom, so we actually have lots of pump stations that pump the sewage to the treatment plant. And the treatment plant is kind of by the refineries, by the Chevron refinery. We're actually rebuilding it right now. So just as an FYI, we treat about 40 million gallons of sewer a day. And so it's a significant amount. The city has 3 major trunk lines, and the trunk line that services this area and the university is actually built in the 1880s, and it kind of meanders through downtown and then goes along Beck Street. It followed the contours of the land, and it's still in remarkable shape. It was actually built out of brick, and we still use that, and that's the trunk lane that conveys all the downtown flows, all the Avenue flows, all the University of Utah flows, and some of the Sugar House flows. Every year we camera every line every 3 years we camera every line in the city, and we also clean it. And we also run a hydraulic model that we are constantly calibrating and updating to try to be proactive and upsize portions of the city that need to be upsized. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mariah, and she'll actually talk about the project in question.
Thank you. So the city is going to be upsizing the sewer main along South Temple between 700 and 800 East and between 10th and 12th East. The method that we've chosen for upsizing is called pipe bursting. It's a trenchless method. So this method was selected because it would have fewer impacts to the community, since we don't have to dig inside of the road. The purpose for this project is that the current sewer main is at capacity, and so there is a potential with weather events and with growth that there could be surcharges and the sewer would be backing up into the community. And so that's why we are choosing to upsize it now. It was originally installed in 1896. This again goes over the project area. So the sewer line is on the north side of South Temple. It is mainly located in the park strip. So we're hoping that there will be minimal impacts to the roadway and to traffic. Schedule would be construction we're expecting to start in fall of 2024 and extend into the spring of 25. And then anticipated impacts, so the shoulder, in order to allow for construction, may be closed, the bike lanes and some pedestrian routes may have to be rerouted. There will be sewer bypassing in place, so all of the services, they will need to stay in service, and in order to accommodate that, when they're doing the pipe bursting, they have to put pipes in above the ground in order to bypass all the sewage to the trunk lines. We will potentially be installing cleanouts or using cleanouts on the properties for bypassing. And then tree protection will also be in place for all the trees along that corridor.
Are sidewalks affected?
Yes, potentially.
So pipe bursting, it's trenchless,
Yeah, I understand.
but at the same time, everyone's connection still has to get reestablished. So they have to dig down to where everyone's connected and reinstate their service.
And
So every service there'll be a little hole, but other than that, it's gonna be all trenchless.
this picture is actually taken on site. So you see a sewer manhole in the bottom. And so the main is underground and it goes straight from there. But as you can see, the sidewalk and potentially part of the roadway may be affected by the construction. But they're going to try to keep the pits where they put their equipment into the side streets, not inside the main corridor.
Why the gap in the middle?
The gap,
Why 8 to 10? Why is that a gap?
it was,
So it's different sizes of sewer pipe, because as it goes to the west, it takes on more flow from the avenues. So as you move westward, it has to be larger. And so there's just portions that were 15 and then 12, and like, for example, the 12-inch is too small. And then as you move eastward, there's 10-inch but then there's 8 inch and the 8 inch is too small. So that explains that gap in the middle, because those pipes in the middle are adequately sized.
Thank you.
So you're going to a 12-inch pipe.
The lower portion is 15 and then the upper portion is 10. Yes. But there's a lot of slope, and these carry a lot of flow because they take in a lot from the university and then all the avenues. So they're a smaller pipe, but they carry a lot of flow for a sewer pipe.
Does that service the entire university?
No, it just services a good chunk of it. There's some of the university that comes further south.
What did you say the impact on the trees would be?
So we're really concerned about the trees, which is also why we selected pipe bursting. We're going to require that the contractor have an arborist and come up with a tree protection plan. We're also working with urban forestry because the trees are very critical. And the places where we have to dig, we're going to have them hydro dig, so they're not going to get an excavator out there. They're actually going to dig with pressurized water. It's a softer, less invasive dig. Once again, we can't guarantee, but we are doing everything that we can to protect those trees.
If a pipe like this gets plugged, does it flood the nearby houses, and is there any protection for those houses on the backflow?
Yes, so that's what she was talking about, bypass. The sewer you can't shut off. So every time you work on the sewer, you have to bypass the flows around it. So this project where they're pipe bursting, they'll actually put pumps in upstream, and they'll actually pump the sewage around the working zone and downstream. And when we do that, we require redundancy. So the pumps are twice as big as they need to be, and there's twice as many. So if one fails, you have a backup. And so that's to help with that.
But even if there weren't construction, there's still the prospect of the pipe caving in or there being a blockage?
Yes, there's always that concern.
Does that happen much, and does it flood the houses?
It happens occasionally.
Yeah.
And so if anyone has issues, I can give you a number to the claims, but it does happen occasionally. But that is why every 3 years we clean and camera them. But there's also locations of the city that we call hot spots that are known to be at higher risk, and they do those quarterly, sometimes monthly. Sometimes there's portions where there's grease. Sometimes the roots get in, and so they go and cut the roots out and put a treatment on the roots so they won't grow in the sewer main. So it's an evolving thing, and we have staff 24/7 to accommodate.
I don't want to tie you up too long, but if you're getting your pipe redone, can you also get a backflow preventer?
So the city takes ownership of the sewer of the main, the sewer main. The lateral is the property owner. So if you wanted to add that, that would be on the property owner to add the backflow.
Are you doing HDPE or HDPE?
Yes, this is HDPE.
This is a broader question, but with all these thousands of new residents in the city, I'm wondering what the city is doing at their sewage treatment plants. You said there's construction. How are they handling this huge increase in usage?
It's very concerning. We're trying to be proactive. We've done master plans. Like I said, we have this model, and we're constantly calibrating the model. When these developers come in, these high rises with lots of sewer flow, we make them analyze the sewer system, because like I said, sewer's downhill, so where they tie in may be fine, but a mile down the road might not be big enough. And so we model all of that and make them upsize where they need to be. But at the same time, we are doing another master plan, and we do them regularly to try to stay on top of that. And the treatment plant was sized with a little bit of this growth taking place, because it's a 50-year lifespan of that treatment plant. So that was projected to be able to be sized for that. But a lot of the pipes were installed in the 1800s, and no one could have anticipated, the growth and the demand. It's amazing that a lot of, like, our trunk lines still has capacity, one that goes through downtown. So.
Go Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, any other questions? I think we're right on time. Oh, yes.
There's a very bad cockroach problem in the sewers, also the cable sewer, the cable conduit out on the street, and at night around midnight, if you go out on a summer evening, cockroaches will come out like a steady stream of them. I mean, we're talking thousands of them in a night. I mean, I have the photos, the videos of like these thousands coming out. So we started putting down diatomaceous earth around them because when I called the city, they didn't treat sewers. They said if they treated the sewer on my street, the cockroaches would just move someplace else. But I did notice that they had dropped off a little bit by August last year. Are the sewers being treated now?
No, we don't treat for bugs like what they said. I do know last year, I think with the large rain year, I felt like there was a lot more insects than normal. But yeah, we don't treat for insects. We'll clean them, that may take care of some, but we don't treat. And lots of that too is the treatment plant, basically there's bacteria there that actually eats the sewer, and then it's clean enough that they put it back in the salt lake. And so if you treat, and if you put too many dangerous things down the sewer, it throws off the treatment process.
Right, this wasn't down the sewer, it was putting diatomaceous earth around our homes. We have it all around our homes, along our driveways, and then around these manhole covers, because that's where they come out of at night.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a...
Could probably step on, if you wanted to, conservatively, you could step on 500 of them in 30 minutes.
Unfortunately, it's sewer.
Out of your scope.
Yeah. So, if there's no more questions, we'll move on. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. We have had a Community Development Land Use Committee for a long time. And one of the things that we did about 10, 12 years ago is we tried to identify every possible development project that was going to come our way, because there was so much coming. And we did that by looking at the map, looking at where buildings looked. If I were a developer, what would I do? And we came up with every location that we could think of. And we ended up knocking on doors and asking the businesses, the various locations, if they were doing anything in their plans. And we actually ran across a lot of things. The list is now long of who we worked with. Back in the old days, many of you will remember, we used to go storm the Planning Commission in droves, and we'd give our comments, etc. But by then it was really too late, because things had already really progressed a long way. People had spent a lot of money on design, on engineering. And so by the time we tried to do things at the Planning Commission, it was very difficult to make a change. And so by backing it up, and one of the examples where we really started very first, and we had to also storm a little bit, was the Rocky Mountain substation on 11th East. And it was truly the community that came out in force. We met every Saturday, and Rocky Mountain Power said, we have to do it this way. And it was going to be this, I can't remember, Joel, 45-foot tall, if I remember right, massive development that was going to go there, and it was going to look worse than the one on 8th, between 8th South and 9th South. It was going to be really horrendous. And we have so much expertise in the community that what kind of happened is about 45 people showed up every Saturday. We worked for 2 or 3 hours and came up with plans, and Rocky Mountain said, you can't do it that way, and so we'd go back to the drawing board and find other ways to do it. And when you really look at that substation now, you can see from 11th East, it's in pretty good shape. If you look at the very back, it's a dark station. We have 1 or 2 towers up is all. If you look from the back, it's at least protected with protective fencing, the wall, the landscape, etc. What they did is they used the slope and they built down. That was from the community. That was not their plan. That was our community that came up with that idea. And then they then took that standard and used it as their standard in the future for every time they went into a residential area. And the next place they went was Foothills, Foothill Drive. And people didn't even notice that that substation was going in, because they found a land lot that was sloped and did the very same thing where they were able to put it down in the ground. The next one we found was IHC on 9th East. And if you actually look, I listed out the projects in the last 10, 12 years and came up with over 27 projects that we had actually worked on that were all big ones. That if you really saw what was going to be there in the first place and versus what ended up being developed, it was a massive improvement. It may not have been a wish Rocky Mountain would just leave and move, but it was a compromise that was better. And so this is something that we've been doing for a long time, is this kind of negotiation, collaboration, figuring out what can work. And so we finally have caught a little breath, and these amazing people have stepped forward, and our trustees on our board. So we reorganized a bit and actually are delving into specialty areas. And on the email, I sent out the full list of our community, our leadership, and everybody's welcome. We'd like to have you involved. There are many more topics we can do. But also tonight, what we do is take a moment to actually let everybody introduce themselves and just talk a little bit about their particular project area. Now we've got a couple of people we're zooming in. So we're gonna start with Jessica, I think. Is she on? No, and we've got Jessica and we've got Debbie. Can we see? Okay, hello. All right, Jessica, go ahead.
Oh,
We can't hear her. Let's see.
can't hear you. No, are you muted at your end?
Do you have on your end?
I'm actually hear her. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There you go, now we can hear you.
So they
Yeah, I
can't
can
hear
hear
us. You're good. We can hear you both.
Okay, you're good.
Can you hear me? Can you hear us now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yay, okay. Hi, everybody. How's it going? My name's Jessica Kobabe, and I am the communications director for East Central, but also the specialty area that I'm going to be heading up is sustainability. And I'm really excited to work with you guys and look at ways that we can make our community more sustainable, whether it be air quality or recycling. And just to get us kicked off, since it is Earth Month, I wanted to share a few opportunities that are a little bit outside of our community borders or area, but just some things that if you guys are interested in getting involved, we'd love to have you come by. So the first one is I actually also serve on the board of the Utah Recycling Alliance. And I don't know if any of you have heard of CHARM events. They are the collection of hard to recycle materials. And so we are going to be up in Hogle Zoo on April 20th from 10 to 1. And that basically is an event where you can bring really hard to recycle materials from styrofoam and batteries, contact lens cases. I mean, so many different things that would otherwise normally get landfilled. It's a really great way to divert that trash and make it recyclable. And so there is a complete list of items that you can take to the CHARM event on the Utah Recycling Alliance website. That's utahrecyclingalliance.org. And if you have any questions, you can be sure to let Esther know, and then I can follow up with any of that information if you guys need it. But it's a really, like I said, just a great way to divert some of that recycling that may otherwise get landfilled. Now, the other event that's happening actually on that same day from 11 to 2 is a clothing swap. And that's actually something I'm hosting with my brand, which is EcoBabe Collective. And what this is basically you can come and bring items in your wardrobe that you're no longer wearing, and you can actually swap them out with other people who are at the event for a completely new wardrobe. So it's a really fun way to get to know more people within the community, and a really great way to have a little bit more of a refreshed wardrobe without having to break the bank. So I just wanted to let you know about those events that are happening now this month, but then we are really excited to look at other ways that we can improve sustainability within the ECC. So it's nice to meet all of you, and I look forward to getting to know you guys better.
Thank you. Any questions for Jessica? No? Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, bye. Okay, Debbie, let's see. There we go. Hi.
Hi everyone, I'm Debbie Fader and I am heading the committee about Parks and Green Space for the ECC, and sort of like Jessica, I actually wear other hats too, so I'll just mention those because they're related. One of them is I'm on the board for an organization called Save Our Foothills, and it seeks to work with Salt Lake City to improve their plan for developing recreational opportunities in the foothills, so mostly trails, but doing it with an eye towards ecological preservation because it is a delicate environment. And the ECC does abut the foothills. They come right up to the university, and the next phase of the city's project planning for trails will impact this area. For example, in Dry Creek near the JCC. So I'm interested in open spaces, I'm interested in parks, and I'm also part of an organization called FIDOS, which seeks to help educate people about dogs and open space. That also will come into play with the trail development, because right now most of those areas are technically not off-leash areas, although informally they are, and we're trying to work with the city to help make a plan to have some off-leash opportunities near the city, because there really aren't many. And that segues into the parks and open spaces. The ECC has some park areas, proportionally not as much open space and green space as there is in some other areas of the city. And of course that includes recreational areas for people with their pets. But we do have some, and I'm interested in inventorying those spaces and also hearing from people in the community how they use the spaces, how they'd like to use the spaces, what your concerns are about the spaces. For example, how well they're kept up, how well or poorly they're kept up. Fault Line Park, I live near there and I see sometimes it seems sort of neglected. There's also Reservoir Park, and there's a little park behind the senior center on 10th East called Victory Park. So those are some of our little gems, and then we have a few other small places also. And then finally, there are green spaces that are not parks, like the islands on 1200 East, and there are a couple of other streets that have some islands as well. And I'll be looking at what can be done to keep those in better shape so that people aren't parking on them, so that they're kept maintained by the city, so that people aren't thinking that they're good dumping grounds for old furniture, that sort of thing. I'm really interested in getting more people involved in this committee, so I would encourage anybody who has any interest in this to contact me. My email and my phone number are on the list that was distributed, but I'll tell you it here also. My email is selkiedog@gmail.com, so that's S as in Sam, ELKIEDOG@gmail. And my phone number is 801-755-0887. And I look forward to working with anybody who's interested in getting involved. Any questions for me? No? Okay. Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
I don't think we found Jen. Jen was going to be speaking next on kind of the Zoom link for us. First I'm going to echo, this idea is that each topic leader will involve some committee members in their area that are interested in that same topic to work on it. And an example on this green space parks situation, we all know that half of Reservoir Park gets flooded and we can't really use it. We all know that the 12th East Islands are in a really bad shape. We've put in for a capital improvement project now 3 different times. We probably as an organization are going to try and put that in again to try and see if we can get something done about the curb around it so people stop parking and breaking the sprinkler system and killing the trees, etc., so that it becomes a viable space. So those are some of the kinds of things that we're going to be working on. Well, we're going to start with building relationships with our city counterparts in each of these topics and really just see what's available to us as a community. Oh, sorry. Just to speak for a couple of people who are not here tonight, and then we'll hop back to the order that we have on here. Frederick, on our board, is going to be looking at public art. So one of the places that we are starting with public art is the development project that I mentioned earlier on 11th East and First South. That project, because of the funding that they received, requires a piece of public art or a mural on the side of the building. And so he's going to be starting with that particular project to see what we would like to see in the neighborhood, and then also look to see what other types of public art we might want or not want in our area. We have Jen, who, as we all know, has expertise in many areas, but she's taken on pedestrian safety, bike safety, and streets in general. She's going to be looking at hot spots where we especially need work, what the road plans are in our area, how we can impact them to make improvements. You'll notice that for the school here on 7th South, there was some great improvements made on this side, if you look at the curb and around. To actually provide some better safety for the students, got some signs installed. Those were things that not this committee did, but the ECC worked together with the city and with Jim to try and make that happen. So that's the kind of thing she'll be working on. Let's see, who else am I missing that's not here? Anna, I'm excited to have Anna be part of our team. She has a lot of experience in small business work, and she has Square Kitchen and her own, other business. She's done a lot of incubator types of things. She's going to be helping with some of those aspects. She has a lot of relationships in the economic development side of things, so we're excited to have her help there. Okay, Grace, come on up, back to us. So we're going to be working and heading a project related to the business districts in our area. We're starting with the University Business District, but also joining us is the ninth area, and also Trolley Square, because we dip down and pick up Trolley Square in our boundaries. So we're very excited to be working. There have been many, many plans over the years that have been done on this area. There have been many done by the city. There have been many done by students who have come and done ideas of what could be done. In fact, we have a student here with us tonight. I'm going to let you stand, from the University of Utah. We just presented to her class to see if she will take on our project to take a look at what could be done in the area. And what we're interested in is maintaining charm, maintaining good relationship with the neighbors, just the street in general. We all know it's a parking issue. Many of us have seen back when it was a place we all ran to get our used books and our copies made, and that all changed, and our ice cream and our records, and that all changed. And we've got some empty building situations going on, and we think it's better to come ahead of time and see what plans we could maybe present and come up with, and then move forward to try and present them. Do you want to add anything to that? Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, I think the goal is just to, try to make the business area as vibrant as possible and see how we can better support the business owners in the community and hopefully provide what services everyone the best. So I think that's the goal.
What is also important is that her firm owns several of the buildings, so it's very beneficial to have her be part of this. 5? 6? 5 buildings, yeah. So we're excited to have her help. So if you're interested in this particular committee, come let us know. Well, we started meeting a couple of weeks ago. We're meeting again next week, so we're excited to have you be involved if you're interested. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Gwen, you're up.
Hi, I'm Gwen Christ. I don't have nearly as much to present to you because I'm just getting started. So Esther approached me and asked me to be on the board, and I've sort of loosely been involved for a long time. And one of the things I'm really concerned about are the state of the trees in our urban forest. And just in my 1.5 block radius that I see every day when I go outside, we've lost over 36 trees in the last 25 years since I've lived here. So it's very concerning, and I'm looking forward to working with the city and with the neighbors to try to preserve what we have and care for it better and to restore, hopefully, what we've lost. So I would love to have some help. I'm just getting started doing some research and reaching out to some folks, but let me know if you want to get involved. Thanks.
How much is a tree worth?
That's a really good question. There are some studies on that, and I can look that up. And
I think that'd be important to tell neighbors, especially landowners who just care about rent.
Because it adds to property values, but it also cools, so it saves you in energy and a lot of other things.
That might help slumlords understand that they're valuable.
I'd most like to do kind of an educational campaign with the neighbors and provide some information, make it fun, maybe a workshop, some flyers, things like that. So
give them 2 seconds of a little of what you've done in your life. Because I don't know that everybody knows you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I've lived in Salt Lake for 38 years. I moved here to go to college at the U, and I just never left. And I'm from Wyoming originally, and I have my degree is environmental education, so that's always been a focus. I've worked for the zoo, for the aviary, for a lot of for the Division of Wildlife. And I most recently just retired from ARUP Laboratories, where I worked for 30 years. And I ran an organization called Slow Food Utah. Some of you might be familiar with Slow Food. Jen Colby was also on the board for Slow Food for a long time. I was the chair of that organization for 10 years, and am just involved in the community and like to stay that way.
Great.
Okay, thanks.
You can see the level of people I'm talking about. It's just great. Okay, Jerry, where are you? There you are. Come on up.
Hello, everybody. I have taken on historic preservation. I've lived in the area in the same house for 35 years. And so I do love this area. So I've got a couple questions for you. Did you know that there used to be springs in this area? And there were greenhouses used by the city, and that's where they grew all their flowers for the city, was up here in our area because of those springs. They've been capped, but kind of just a fun little tidbit of information. Also, where there are islands, like the parkways, it used to be on some of those that they had the power poles running down the middle of the street. And so when they moved those, we were left with this space, and they turned them into green space. And they called them parkings rather than islands or parkways. But those are just kind of some fun tidbits about our history. I don't know very much about preservation yet, but I'm excited to learn, and I hope some of you might join me. A couple of things I think would be really important for us to take on. One is to provide information to new or potential homeowners moving into the area, letting them know what it means to live in a historic area. There are some restrictions, but there are also a lot of benefits. And I'm sure some of you could take advantage of those as well. There are tax incentives, credits, that kind of thing. Also, in a historic district, yes, you do have to keep the front of the home to a certain standard. Inside, you can do almost anything you want, so that's kind of helpful to know. I know we've had some neighbors who've moved into the area, painted their brick, and were told you can't do that and had to blast the paint off again. So we'd really like to prevent that frustration from happening. The other thing that I would like to put out there is that anybody that wants to research the history of their houses, there are a lot of resources: Stansbury Maps, Sanborn Maps, Utah State Preservation Office, National Resources. Preservation Utah is a really great resource. So if you're interested in researching your home also, your home's history, there are a lot of resources, and then we would love to have that information to share, put on a website or in a newsletter, because I think it's important to catalog that great history. I want to put in a quick plug, though, for Preservation Utah, because they've got their 53rd annual Historic Homes Tour on Saturday, May 18th, and it is in the City Creek Canyon Historic District. So tickets are available on their website, but those tours are always great. So in case you want to try to make one of those. Also, I don't know if you've driven around Yale Crest area. They have put toppers on their street signs, letting people know that they're a historic district. That's another option of something we might look into. So if you're interested in helping out, talk with me. My email and phone number are on the paper. Any questions? Thoughts?
I have a question. Is historical preservation done house by house or street by street, or is it done in whole big swaths and try to keep zoning changes from occurring and try to keep development, from houses from being those and apartments going in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, I think all of our area is National Historic Register, right? But not all of it is local. And you really have more, more teeth in what you can do if you're part of a local historic district. So that could be something too that we could work on. Because I think, which ones are not local?
Leavenworth Down, Douglas, Benyon.
Okay, those are the two that I was thinking of.
Right.
University is local. So that's something we can look at. Normally what you do is take it either street by street or, whatever you decide, but you have to have input from all your neighbors. You have to have a percentage that agree that they want it to be a local historic district. And then you go through the process with the city to make that happen. So, does that answer your question? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you,
Terry.
Okay, Kathy, where are you? Here you are.
Thanks, I'm Kathy Scott, and I wanted to mention a couple of things regarding his Preservation Utah. Preservation Utah is honoring Our Lady of Lourdes church parishioners and neighbors on April 25th. Honorable mention only, but for putting out the signs and for doing sending in the petitions and the postcards. It delayed the process, and for now, at this moment, the church is safe unless the property is, sold at any time, but I think it did have an impact, and I wanted to thank everybody who put the signs in their yard particularly, and some still have them in their signs up, don't they? So thank you. The committee that I agreed to serve on was Housing and Displacement, and I just started, so I don't know exactly where it's going to take us, but we all do know that because of our land values, there's a developmental demand, and the character of East Central neighborhood is changing so dramatically. We have problems with absentee landlords, land banking, an extraordinary number of Airbnbs, development that's resulting in evictions, replacing affordable housing with new buildings that are not quite so affordable, many of them. And they also, the larger buildings are causing disruption of traffic patterns, pedestrian walk patterns, a whole multitude of things that happen. And of course, one of the problems is we've been seeing a lot of ordinance exceptions for additional height and less setbacks and things like that. So one of our biggest challenges, I think that, and the first thing that this committee needs to do is we have to figure out what is on the ground. We need an inventory of what we have. We need statistics so that we can document changes and we can address concerns. For example, in my neighborhood, there's one block face where every single house on the block is an Airbnb with the exception of one. And the neighborly fabric has been obviously greatly impacted by having only one full-time family left on the block face. So how are we going to overcome this challenge? Well, it's going to have to come from us. We're going to have to figure out the best way to do an inventory. So what I'm looking for this evening is maybe 2 or 3 volunteers who would be willing to help me start and complete an inventory of what's on the ground. We wouldn't necessarily have to go the house to house, building to building. I think we'd have to identify someone on a particular block who can do that, because we each know our own neighbors better than someone 4 blocks away. So I am looking for some volunteers that would be willing to serve on that committee. And also something that everybody can do. There's actually several things that everybody can do. First off, keep your ears and eyes open on what's happening on your block or in your building. Report concerns, report them to this committee, report them to Esther, and report them to Eva, our council person. But make sure that you let us know so that we can keep a running tally of what you've reported. If you don't know your neighbors, make it a point this summer to get to know everybody on your block face. Not everybody on your block, just your block face. Get to know your neighbors. Ask them if they have any concerns, what they're worried about or what they've observed. And when you're out walking, stop and chat with construction workers, utility workers, city employees that may be out doing something on the street, because they are an amazing source of information of what's happening. If you do contact the city directly, because we want to work through the city on these, with existing programs, if you do contact the city, just give a quick call to East Central Community Council or drop an email so that we can be sure that the information is shared with Eva, our council person, and also the correct city department. For example, when I called on the cockroaches, I called like 5 different departments before I even found one that would tell me, no, we don't do it. So, or if you have an engineering problem on the street, or we want to make sure it gets to the right party, but we need to document it so we know, and you know, that you're not the only one that complained. Also, we can't assume that all the city departments are able to share information. That's an assumption on our part if we think that the sewer department is in close communication with the curbs and gutters, and it just doesn't happen. So, so what I'm looking for is a couple of volunteers, maybe 3 volunteers to work on this inventory, and everybody keep their ears and eyes open. And my email and telephone number are both on here under housing and displacement. And if you have any concerns tonight, make sure you let me know. And thanks for your time.
Question? Question. I got a question.
Yes.
So it's my understanding that Airbnbs or they're short-term rentals. It's my understanding that they're only allowed in the hotel district, short-term rentals. But there's obviously that doesn't happen. And it's also my understanding that zoning can't do things like look at the Airbnb website to identify them. What can we do to address this problem?
Airbnbs, from what I understand, are legal in almost all areas of the city. In fact, it might be all areas of the city. So what could we do? I think until we have an idea of how many we're dealing with, and because we're east of downtown, we had a ton of them. I think there needs to come a time when there's a very strong ordinance about how many are allowed and to what extent a particular property. For example, there's some homes that I know of that were turned into Airbnbs that have up to 8 guests at a time, because there's 8 bedrooms in the house or 8 rooms in the house. And that's a problem, because we do also have an ordinance that says no more than 3 or more unrelated adults are supposed to be in a household. So I think what we need to do is find out how many we really have, and I think it would be shocking, and I think we can find that out pretty fast. Yes, we could look on the websites and track them down, but their addresses are not on there, and that makes it difficult. But the best way to do it is if you could tell me how many are on your block, and you tell me how many are on your block, and you tell me, then we can put this all together and we can see how many we're really dealing with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Really quick, I don't think Salt Lake actually does permit Airbnbs, so that's something that we need to talk to the city about.
Really?
East of State Street.
Yeah,
So that's been the big issue, yeah, in our direct neighborhood is trying to figure out
Where's the
how to.
Airbnb cops?
That's what we need.
Wait, they're not allowed? Then how do they have?
Can I make a comment? There's,
Yeah.
it's true that Salt Lake generally does not permit short-term rentals in most zoning areas. It has to be a zoning area that allows boarding houses and hotels. So I believe it's the case that in ECC, most, if not all of it, is not a place where Airbnbs are allowed legally. But they don't tend to enforce it unless there's a report. And there's not usually a report unless somebody sees stuff going on that bothers them or it's really noisy. So really that's the way to control it. They will come out and shut one down if there are complaints.
Well, a comment, just as a thought about it, it seems to me that if there really are a lot, and I think there probably are, because I looked once to see if my distant family were to come, too many of them, could we put them in an Airbnb? But if we can show there's a lot, that could be used to fight developments for apartments that we don't want, because why are we putting in new unnecessary apartments? We've got all these apartments, they're just being used illegally.
Yeah,
And
that's
I
what
don't
she's
know.
talking about by
That seems
documenting it.
functional,
So
yeah.
neighbor by neighbor,
Yeah.
you know,
How many people know of a house near them that formerly was occupied by a family, but now is occupied as an Airbnb? We all do. We all do. We know dozens of them, don't we? Yeah.
I was just gonna respond, you're correct. Airbnbs are illegal in Salt Lake. They're allowed by the state, but in Salt Lake City, they're illegal. In order to identify those, it takes a lot of person hours, man hours, woman hours to research and identify that somebody's living in an Airbnb. And there's state laws that we can't circumvent, like we can't get on a website to identify that's the Airbnb from the website. So it takes you and civil enforcement. We do have 2 persons full-time that are investigating these everywhere throughout the city.
So on the website, is what you're saying, you can use the civil enforcement website?
Yeah, go to civil enforcement. There's 2 guys, Jim Elliott and Carlos Ramirez. There are 2 civil enforcement Airbnb dedicated strictly towards Airbnbs.
And we could probably just send them the link from Airbnb showing what house is being.
And if you have photos, if you have evidence, information, you can share that with them as well.
We can send that information to them. And Jim, for one, has been very helpful.
Jim Elliott.
Yeah, Jim Elliott.
So as Tim said, the city can't identify them, but we as neighbors can. So, and we can look at the website. So that's, again, get with Kathy if you're interested in this area. But that's also going to talk a little bit about some of the landowners that are renting to people. Our area at this point is about 60% rental. That's huge. And so having, really taking a look at landlords and getting them on board with what we're trying to do in the neighborhood, that's part of what we'll also be working on. Okay, I'm gonna scoot through a couple of mine real quick. One of the things that I'm gonna be working on is a little bit about ECC branding. I don't know how you are, but when people say, where do you live? I'll go, I live in the ECC. And they go, oh, where's that? And what's that? And I'll go, well, I'm just below the university. And they go, oh, you're in Federal Heights. And I'll go, no, I'm further the other way and below kind of where the park building is. But if you say, I live in the Avenues, I live in Sugar House, it's pretty quickly identified. And it's been interesting that even in the city, folks don't really know where East Central is. And we also are talking a little bit about our names. So that's one of the things that I'll be forming a little committee on. So if you're interested in public relations and branding and those kinds of things, creative, our logo, identifying our area, that would be great to have you help. I'm the manager of our University Neighborhood Gardens, and all 3 of these were parking lot saves. So we have Helen's Neighborhood Orchard, we have the Outreach Community Garden, and we have the Rose Garden next to the Rose Laundry. And we still have some space in the Outreach Community Garden that is on 11th East, behind the LDS Church building. And what's exciting about that area is we've also separated a large plot that is a food sustainability plot where we were able to get the water in last year and we'll be planting this year, and that's an exciting thing. So if you're interested in gardening, we're raising some delicious fresh food. Last year I didn't know a lot about gardening. That was not me, that was my mom. And so last year I did a bin that was just edible flowers. I started there, and so I put all those beautiful flowers on cakes, cupcakes, put them in salads, and they're all edible, and so that's been really fun. So you can start small with a few tomato plants and pepper, make a great salsa garden, and grow into this. So if you're interested, please contact me. Okay, Jonathan. We're gonna go kind of quick. We've got Ava waiting, so we're gonna kind of scoot just a little quick.
I'm totally unprepared. I'm an architect. Everything we've been talking about has architecture and design associated with it. And I just like to see people involved in quality design. And the question is what each individual thinks is quality. Everybody has opinions, but it's pretty clear that the developers don't know what good design is. So maybe so all of these committees, we can work together on doing something. So that was very short. Architects are important.
Okay, last but not least. Okay, let's see. If I got Helen, I've got Tom. I don't know, she's not here. Okay.
Oh, I can't do it alone.
Well, I'll do it with you.
I was just gonna I was just gonna let Helen speak and I was just gonna nod. But anyway, so kind of related to what we were talking about, I moved in to my house 25 years ago when there was a family on one side and a couple on the other side. Now there's a student rental on one side and an Airbnb on the other side. They're notorious party houses. There's a notorious party house right across the street. And so I feel like I'm kind of a victim, and I know that there are hundreds of other people in our neighborhood that feel the same way. So we've put together, I should thank Esther for putting this together and for getting me involved. We put together a group of people who can alert each other when a party is going on. And we can, if I get a text message and I'm awake, I will try and go by that place to verify that it's happening and call the police with my own account of what's happening. And for the police to get multiple calls is very useful because it gets their attention. Other things that have happened, Esther knows more about this, but there's been conversations with the university and with the police to try and deal with this kind of issue. And I guess my message for you all is, if you're directly affected, or if you know people who are directly affected, join us. Get on the email or the text list, and whatever.
Yes, thank you.
Please add.
It's been a real interesting problem. The other thing that we've done is we have gone and worked with the students, brought them cupcakes and cookies in between, sat and talked to the sororities and fraternities, and talked to the houses one-on-one. I usually go out too. If I'm around and I'm up, I go get in my car and I go find that house, and then I go ask to speak who lives there and start talking to the students. It's better to do it on a day when they're not partying, but if they don't respond, then I can get a little aggro, but most of the time they're pretty good, and most of the houses have really kind of chilled out. The university has sent out 2 letters, the city has sent out a letter to all of the ones we identified and then to a larger area, but we've got graduation, like I said, coming up where some folks will be partying and then leaving, so they don't care. So again, if you're affected, join our group. We've got a group text that we all help each other on reporting. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Okay, next, if we got Ava up. Okay, hi, Ava.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you for joining us. Ava is in New York, so it's past bedtime.
And I apologize I cannot be there, but please let me know if it cuts out.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much, Esther. Well, hi everyone. Apologies I can't be there in person. I'm out here in New York City at the Urban Land Institute conference with my colleagues, and what we're learning about is financial packaging and modeling so that cities can incur liability to help promote condos, vertical rises, and really how it feeds into the growth of our neighborhood is to help promote that density that we all want to see in the downtown and to create those pathways to home ownership opportunities. At the same time, to amplify preservation in the neighborhoods that we care about, such as our neighborhood, East Central. So I just wanted to really quickly introduce myself since this is our first meeting since the election. I'm Ava Lopez Chavez. I'm a neighbor you can find regularly walking every morning on Douglas Street, or around the corner I would regularly frequent Coffee Noir, ultimately have been in the neighborhood for quite some time, almost a full decade in the district completely. So it's been great to be there, to be participating. I do want to share I am a renter, but I also suffer. I'm between one Airbnb and one rental home to students. So I know Esther was just talking about the party homes, and I unfortunately am caught between a party home, and so I do face the realities of that. I do want to start out with sharing, my office has sent out recently a letter to the homes that we have identified with civil enforcement as those that are recurring serial offenders, meaning those homes that are satellite frat houses or are nuisance homes, to make sure that they understand, one, the education process behind fining, but two, to also bring attention to those landlords as well as to the students themselves to know what are their offenses, and ultimately to look at more tools, both with the University of Utah as well as the city, to make sure that we are actually citing these homes whenever possible. So we always want to act in good faith and not hyper-regulate noise, but we're not talking about barbecues or backyard parties anymore. We're talking about full-on tailgating happening in the neighborhood. And so we want to make sure to create and maintain safety in the neighborhood. You may have seen over the news cycle this past week in regards to the illegal demolition of the 5th LDS Ward House that's at the corner of our district. And so I just wanted to add some comments on this. One, this is a nefarious illegal act, period. This is something that we've seen developers take advantage of, not just in this neighborhood, we've seen it in other neighborhoods. But I'm excited that my colleagues and I are taking this very seriously, and we've bumped up some of the policies that we were looking at. So just to give a brief overview, what happened for those of you that may not be aware, at 740 South, 300 West, what we saw was the 5th Ward Meeting House. It's not just a nationally registered historic site, it's also a local landmark site, which means it has extra protections. This is something that is really important to me, is that we talk about Salt Lake City's history in forms of architecture and in preserving these spaces. These are third spaces that we all have identities tied to and that are important. So what happened basically is staff was walking by and saw the unconscionable happen, which is these, these contractors were demoing. So thanks to the staff that acted swiftly on Easter Sunday, they were able to pull over, tell the staffers, look up and say, you're not permitted to do this work, and to notify the city immediately. So on Easter Sunday, a stop work order was granted, probably about an hour and a half to the demolition happening. Most of the structure is still preserved, but unfortunately, following those events, we were able to act swiftly in the administration, and thanks to the mayor's office, we were able to cite and fine these individuals, as well as looking to exercise the full extent of our authority, which means looking at civil and criminal processing. As soon as I have more information, we've been getting up to date on this, but the last kind of citation that was granted is they were cited by the city to fully have to reconstruct the project. I'm still figuring out whether or not that means utilizing the actual bricks from the original structure, as well as trying to identify, besides the fines, does this permit this developer who has other applications in line, will that allow them to conduct business fairly in our city, knowing that they have done this historically to us. So as soon as I have that information, I'll be happy to share, but as far as our legal team and our authority, we know that there's applications coming in from the same developer. Personally, I'm not excited about this. I think we know that their intentions are to demolish historic buildings. So when we see that down the pipeline, that's something that our attorneys have said we don't want to consider. But again, these are nefarious actors. These are people that are not interested in good stewardship in our city. And this is kind of the question we've been talking about, is if you buy a historic building or if you buy in a historic neighborhood, that means Salt Lakers prior to us had identified these structures as places, as third spaces to preserve for future generations. Meaning if you acquire that asset, that with good intention that you will be a good steward to our city, to our architecture, and to our history that we all want to share. So it's something I feel very strongly about. The exciting thing is that although we cannot predate the happening, going forward, we have moved some of our policies so that it's no longer a slap on the wrist that you can just demolish and ask for forgiveness, but rather we have increased the rate of fine 1,400%. So that way those fines are extreme, as well as not just the fining process, but making sure that there's a process in which we can define a contributing or non-contributing structure. Some of you may remember in the past, we've talked about this, that in our own neighborhood, we have identified buildings, or the city has come in to inspect and said this is no longer a non-contributing structure. That's due to dilapidation because that landowner has not been a good steward. And so that's due to land banking, which is a term to basically acknowledge people buying structures or lands as assets and letting them dilapidate. So we are going to be more thorough in finding them and making sure that that's no longer happening, as well as looking at demolitions due to negligence. So in our neighborhood in particular, we have seen fires go up, fires of all different types of structures. You may remember most recently the pink mansion on the corner of 3rd South and 7th East, due to negligence, burned up, unfortunately, and was demolished. There are structures in our city that I believe, with the knowledge I've been given, we know that we could have protected. So this budget season, something to keep in mind is there were some funds turned, such as our Fix the Bricks program, which many of you can apply for. I'm really happy that my colleagues and I, in particular, I was able to lead this effort, but to get it funded, because we know there's a huge backlog of homeowners in this city that need help to support the actual integrity and integrity of the facade, but also of the structure of their home. So these aging homes, they have beautiful bones, but they need to be taken care of. It's important for us to invest back in those housing units so that they can keep raising families long-term in our city. I'll stop there quickly before I move on. Do we have any questions? That was parties, and then that was preservation process, but really more on the enforcement side of demolitions.
Is
Any
the
questions?
contractor who did the demolition, are they getting fined as well as the developer? I mean, working
That's
on
correct. So they
Easter
were
Sunday.
correct. So the contractor and the developer,
Beautiful.
which is technically it's a partner of the development team, but yes, they were both cited by the city. So it wasn't just the developer. That's correct. Yeah, Jonathan, so basically what I'm trying to figure out is if we know that contractor gets hired by the city again, or by anybody in the city, can we put a stop work order? And that's what I'm still trying to figure out, to make sure that those bad actors are not invited back to do work in our city.
Thank you.
Can their license be suspended? Can the contractor license be suspended?
That I'm not sure of. We did meet, just so you're aware, the city council did meet with our legal team. That wasn't a public meeting because they're still in legal judicial process. So as soon as we're able to share with you, I will. For right now, what I do know is we were looking both at civil and criminal charges, which is something that we haven't exercised in the past.
Great.
Any other questions?
Quick question, David. Thanks for, also, this is Nate. I don't know if you can see me over here.
Hi, Nate. Yeah, I do see you. Thank you.
So first of all, yeah, thanks for helping out with that developer. We actually stopped doing business with him because he's the same developer that knocked down Ichiban, the old church. They're on like 30s or so. Anyway, so, but yeah, thanks for your help on that. But going back to the extreme partying in the neighborhood, so really quick, I just wanted to check in on that as far as what is being done to cite the homeowners with calls coming in, because there's been a lot of phone calls that we've made for these huge parties that have been happening, and the cops will come, then they'll leave, the party will keep going on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually have I've taken the liberty to find the homeowner's phone number myself and just reached out and said, hey, I'm your neighbor, just want to let you know this party's going on. Oh, thank you, I had no idea. I would have thought that the cops would have called me if there was any issue with this. This has happened multiple times, so me calling the homeowner and just letting them know, just a friendly phone call, hey, it's Nate, I'm around the corner, they've stopped. So I just wanted to express that's a big win right there. So I just want to let you guys know if there's anything that can be done that can get right to the root of the problem is getting directly to the homeowner, because they are not being held accountable for, if they're bad, landlords, and as we know, as we heard from the statistics that, 65% is now rentals, so, and it's mostly rentals, unfortunately going directly to the tenants. I've noticed that in Esther, that party we went to where we were trying to oh, hey guys, let's be cool. They had another huge rager right after that, so then we finally found the homeowner's number, and he was like, oh, I had no idea, and it had been going on for a long time. So anyway, so I just wanted to ask you, what can be done to you know, because it's wasting our taxpayer dollars, it's wasting the police their time, everybody's time, if it's not just getting, even like a letter being sent to the homeowner, hey, you have been cited at the house or something like that. I don't know, so.
Yeah,
is there something
and I
like that?
appreciate you asking. This is something I've inquired with, so I meet with the mayor in a week, and this is something that I've let her know. It's top of mind. The reason why it's a priority is because it keeps getting, you know, literally the can keeps getting kicked down the road. And the reality is the U is growing rapidly. We see the construction just outside our window. They're trying to densify and to bring more students on campus full time. Right now, the citation process still goes through a regular 911 call, which means it's gonna be, the burden of proof is gonna be contingent on an individual officer citing. Outside of that, you know, what I can share is, one, the city has funded more software, in particular to Airbnbs, but it really is for rentals, to make sure that we're properly inspecting. The second piece that I see to this is to actually follow suit and to go home to home. And this is something that Esther and I talk about, which is in our neighborhood, we haven't had inspections, we have a backlog, and there's a lot of unrelated people. That doesn't mean we don't want to accept them, but rather there's a lot of unruliness that's it's the nature of not having something approved or fault, right, that's being cataloged by the city in operation. So I'd be happy to report back. I'm really curious to see what is our actual citation process besides a 911 call, because they're not getting reported to, and I've experienced this myself already this year. So just because we had a pandemic that was quiet, it doesn't mean that this wasn't happening. It's happening, what I believe at a much larger strength of presence. You know, and again, we have a proper tailgate area. We have spaces where students, families, individuals, alumni, right, that come up to the U. But what we do have is a huge, you know, disrespect to parking, quite frankly, and to the neighborhood as far as alcohol, drug consumption, right, the illegal activity that we know is happening. These aren't regular backyard parties that we're trying to prevent, but rather the unsafety, hazardous activity that comes along with these giant types of groupings. Because in any normal process, you would pull a permit. So Nate, if you're okay with that, this is something that's been top of mind for a while. I just haven't gotten a good response yet from, and it's not that the admin isn't working on it. Sure. I know they're working on it. It just hasn't been something that I could sit face to face with the mayor with, but literally on the phone.
I know you all need to go, Ava and etc. Ava, I don't know if you can hear me, but I do want to add to that. So Tim has actually organized for us and done some work with civil enforcement, where we had a meeting and all of civil enforcement and us got together and talked about this very issue. And each house that is being rented is actually supposed to have a business license. And they've got a process of how many reports actually need to come in for each house. And then at that point, civil enforcement actually takes it on from the 911 calls. And we actually had them look and pull reports on some of the houses that were causing us the extra problems to see what was taking place. And we found that some of the reports were missing. And so we started looking at what is actually happening on the police side when we're reporting in. That's why it's so important when we report, you say, I need a case number. I need an incident number. Because if they don't actually take that and get an incident number or give you back a case number at some point, it doesn't go through the civil enforcement process for them to go after that particular landowner and that landlord. So we're gonna have a follow-up meeting, and maybe what we could do is invite Ava to join us, Tim. We were gonna have a follow-up meeting to talk about this and this process for us, so thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Esther, and besides being a part of that, I think the reality is that there's a key need. It's not just our neighborhood, but we see this impact so greatly manifested because we're caught between a growing renter city in downtown core and the university expanding. So making sure that, again, we're providing those safe spaces for people to gather. We have a beautiful walkable neighborhood. We wanna make sure that the intent is to create and maintain that safety, not to expand these hazardous events or happenings. So yeah, I'd love to report back to you, Nate. And I'm in the group chat with all the party requests. So it is top of mind. If I don't respond, it's not because there isn't an answer. It's just more proof cataloging. So This is something that, like I said, I experienced too, so I want to make sure that you understand that this is something that is a huge priority. I want to move on real quick and share some of the priorities for today, and hopefully you all got a handout. Just really quickly, I have city updates on there. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but please go ahead and look at them. Email me. I'd love to hear your feedback. Some of this talks about the RDA's vision. We'll be setting soon. The redevelopment agency sets every year its priorities. This year, I'm advocating for a pathway to home ownership. That means looking at redevelopment agency funds, not to fund the supply of single unit apartment rentals, but to look more creatively at what would it look like to fund housing units and structures outside of our perpetual housing fund. That's our community land trust where the city comes in with individual residents to try to buy housing. We see that primarily gonna help our West Side communities. I'm looking at tools that are gonna help keep and maintain the housing stock in both Central City and East Central, because that we know historically these have been neighborhoods for families. As well as Japantown. Something I want to highlight, it is a downtown project, but the downtown is for everybody. Just really quickly, we have a great opportunity with the Delta Center coming in. Not only will City Council get to vote on a 0.5% tax increment, part of that tax increment has been allocated for homelessness mitigation. This is a great investment tool to help us really secure those HRCs, our human resource centers, as well as some of the neighborhoods in the downtown that are hurting right now, as well as our neighborhoods. So just want to put that top of mind. But with the Delta Center looking to expand to provide the National Hockey League some space, that gives the city the opportunity to rebuild Japantown. And just some really quick history on Japantown. It's on 100 South, between 200, 300 West, right next to the Salt Lake Convention Center. And in 1978, the city, so Salt Lake City Corporation and Salt Lake County, exercised eminent domain. So all those Japanese markets and housing units were demolished to make room for the convention center. So this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our city to not just reinvest back in this part of the neighborhood, but to really acknowledge the deep, diverse history here. So I hope if you're supportive of that you email me and contact me. I'm supportive of it. I just want to let you know, I think this is a really great opportunity for us to kind of crack open that nugget that is downtown and to make it more walkable and feasible for people to move in. So if you go through that list, again, there's just more zoning and text amendments. Ballpark station area rezone is coming up too. If you care about the ballpark, please let me know. Look at this text amendment. We're looking at changing its form-based code to MU8, which is mixed use 8 zoning, which basically allows us to really densify it in terms of housing and commercialization. I just wanted to spend some time really quickly, and when I'm in person, I'd be happy to go more into detail. But I have shared my priorities with each community in mind, and part of these priorities are safety and security. That means looking at my top issues, public safety. It's not just in relations to crime or policing, but also in the economic development and responsiveness of each neighborhood. Home ownership and housing, and in particular, I want to highlight home ownership, right? Not just providing rental units, but as you know, District 4 has the most expensive rent, not just in our city, but in Utah. It's something that we shouldn't be proud of, but we should be fighting to make right, which is an effort to keep these renters in our city, which means opening up a pathway to home ownership, to expand our transit routes. And this is something, again, with our stadiums and with the Olympics looming, you'll hear more and more about the mass attention we're getting as a city, and it's really great. But we also want to keep investing in high frequency and ultimately making sure that families have access to transit as needed. Addressing our environmental concerns. That means looking from our canopy all the way to the green space that the city owns. That's our medians, that's our parks, but making sure we're thinking long-term about our Great Salt Lake, trying to combat the different mines that are happening in Parleys, for example, the Parleys gravel pit, looking at the expansion of the inland port, making sure that everything we're doing is gonna have a long-term effect on the city. And, you know, this is something that I keep seeing, we talk about, we understand,
but we have to come up with tangible solutions, especially when the state is still studying these catastrophes that we know are occurring. And then ultimately, securing and bringing families, what may say downtown, but I want to amplify and say it's not just the downtown, it is East Central. You know, District 4 is kind of seen as our downtown. So if you hear my staff or I use that word, it's in particular in recognizing the diversity of our neighborhood as well. But making sure, again, these aren't in a particular order, but when it comes to keeping our families, our safety, our identity, it's to make sure that as we grow as a population that we're keeping safety. And, you know, I was reading in the NYT, it was on Monday, most cities across America, a single housing unit is above $1 million. We are below that, but again, it's gonna take city investment and work to keep our neighborhoods functioning for the future families that are trying to move in and that are trying to stay in our city. So I hope that shares with you some of my priorities for the next 12 months. I'm really excited to be at the forefront of these issues, and already I've seen where our voice lends itself to adapting a budget that actually trickles money into the hands of our neighbors and residents that need it the most. And I could go on to share those individual stories, but I wanted to leave some time for Q&A real quick.
A question.
Okay, I see a hand.
I understand nationwide, possibly everywhere, there's a huge issue with large corporations buying up housing and turning them into rentals. That's enormous. Is there any way to limit this, prevent this, mitigate it, do something? It just seems to me that's maybe one of our biggest housing issues is all these homes being bought that could be.
And thank you for asking that. And the research that I've conducted in our city, there's kind of two partial answers that I want to give to you. One is there's still private sales and transactions. So, you know, we get the flyers. I tell folks all the time, if my landlord sells under me, you know, it's very possible I'll have to move to a high market rate apartment, which virtually is impossible. You're paying $3,000-4,000 for a single room in our district. That's really expensive. That's New York City prices. I mean, quite frankly, I have friends renting out here that are below Salt Lake City's market, but they're in New York. You know, that's not something to be proud of. The second part of it is that, you know, I want to share, we have levers. For example, Airbnb is still a hot commodity in our city. And although that might be seen as a diversification of a portfolio, you know, there's lots of people that want to take advantage of short-term rentals. We've cracked down as a city. And we see this nationwide where we need supply, we need permanent residents. We need Salt Lakers to be a part of their neighborhoods and communities. And, you know, this is something that we've determined is not possible in our city. It's not helping us bridge that housing supply gap. We still have 54,000 residents across the Wasatch Front waiting for housing stock to be opened up for them, for their availability. But as far as these hedge funds, you know, the way they're doing it, they're bonding and they're mass buying, and it's neighbors like us individually selling to them. So I think in many ways it's educating the seller. As far as any laws we could, or policies we could change to prevent that, again, I'm not aware of a mechanism currently. We have asked our legal team. The biggest leverage we have as the city is to prevent the rentals, right? And again, that's why we have code that says if it's a short-term rental, there has to be a minimum 30-day stay and contract and a business license. It has to be a fully operating business, as well as long-term rentals. So that helps us guarantee that there will be some permanency to that rental unit. Again, we're cracking down on Airbnbs. So, unfortunately, I have friends that have multiple homes in the city and have said, you know, I want to use this. This has helped me with my real estate portfolio. Unfortunately, in our city, this is not a tool that we're able to utilize. And I'll just share, we are one of the hottest Airbnb markets because of our tourism in the winter, but it's also blocking and hurting many of our neighborhoods where we need permanent residents. So unfortunately, I don't agree with that we need more Airbnbs. What we need more of is housing supply for those individuals that want to buy into our neighborhoods. That's what we need right now.
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
folks. Well, I
Yeah.
hope to see you soon. If you see me on a walk, please say hi. I'd love to talk to you more, okay?
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye, Esther. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Sleep tight. I want to take a quick minute now and just see what topics are hot to you that we haven't talked about tonight. What, just topics. We're not going to talk about in depth, just anything else that's concerning you that you want us to add to the lists.
How about Judge Memorial and the prospect that they might change the zoning from institutional to something else? Is there something we can do to disallow that zoning change?
So that's actually one of the things that type of decision, the zoning change, when it goes through the planning commission, that actually goes to the city council. And it takes, any zoning change like that takes 4 votes to be positive. So it's Ava and anyone else that we can get that's at least 4 of the 7 that would agree with us. And that's one of the things that we've worked with the city council really long and hard on, is listening to us on what can and cannot be done. So currently there's no buyer because they're not paying high enough for the property at this point. So we don't know where that is yet, but we've been working with both sides on that. So it's certainly, we've got that. We've got the Benyon School closing, where the city has first right of refusal to purchase that property if the school board decides to sell it. So we're working on that. We are still doing all the land use things that we've always done. We're just also doing topics. And then with the topics, we'll have specialties so that when an application comes forward, we'll have a lot of depth of knowledge to really add towards working with that developer and with that landowner. So, what else?
I'm interested in knowing what the regulations are on fraternity houses. Right directly east of us on 1148 East 300 South, it was a normal, quiet 3-apartment house that had actually 2 people per apartment. So there's 6 students. It's university students. But
tell me the address again. 1148.
1148 East 300 South. So it's now turned into a frat house, and every day there are 10, 20, 30 people in the backyard playing beer pong. And even when it's not a busy party, it's noisy there all the time. And if it's pre-game or a weekend, it can. I have a number of times.
Okay, we'll take on this address. Are you willing to join our little text group?
I am, but I've also developed goodwill with these kids. I've brought them things. I've told them that they throw beer cans in my yard. They need to be full cans, and I specify what kind of beer it needs to be. So they know I've got a sense of humor. I'd love to join, but this is my neighbor too.
Okay, great. But just right after the meeting, let me just make sure I get your information. We'll add you in, okay?
Okay.
And we'll go after it at this address. Okay. What else? Have we exhausted you? Thank you for being here this long. You've been awesome. So appreciate it so much. Send emails, do whatever. We're glad to help. Thank you.
So, I'm assuming I'm sure
there may be. So I think there's I think there's a way materials, forms, shapes, they don't just. They have some long and there's actually good I mean, our age group. You can take a look at the topics that it is. Sit down and talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you write, and also your neighbor, because they're from the street.
Well, what they'll say is, someone else is going on. They'll say, yeah, we're gonna or whatever, what's a good time, right? So it's not your neighbor will be fine. You know, if you look at the wall. Oh, yeah, hi, Joe.
Does it sound interesting to you? And your dad lives where?
Yeah, but I understand that's why they're on hiatus. But we still have the same, we have the same problem.
So we dip down and pick up trouble. Because I'm the one that how far you get.
So on my street, it used to be all the same. It used to be like a 20 houses.
Yeah, me too.
5 of them have been done.
I'm gonna just go turn off this laptop real fast because it's still recording.
To me, it looks like 2, you know? I guess it might be smart. I don't know, but it just doesn't.